Welcome to Leading Beyond the Spreadsheet, where analytical leaders come to transform their technical expertise into embracing and excelling with the people part of work. I'm your host, Kris Liebau. Each episode will bring you insights, stories, and practical ideas and perspectives so you can lead your team effectively with confidence. As this is episode 3, I wanted to really roll out the welcome mat to my fellow analytical leaders and let them know they are seen and take a look at what you can expect from leading beyond the spreadsheet. This podcast isn't only for analytical leaders, it's also for those who better want to understand, collaborate, and communicate with them. Let's kick things off by defining what the term analytical leader means. Right? People who are analytical leaders have that mindset. They value accuracy, right? Doing things the best, continuous improvement, high standards, quality. We tend to lean heavier on rational decision making over the emotional side of things. We can have a really high level of ownership in something. We may want to avoid conflict, preferences for working independently. If you've actually done any form of assessment, if you're familiar with the Wiley disc, you may be a C, a conscientious style. For those that are familiar with positive intelligence, you may experience accomplice saboteurs of hyper-rational or stickler. So if you're feeling seen with this tiny little bit, buckle up because we're going to dive in. So a big part of what I want to emphasize here is that, right, all of those things, those are things that we value or preferences we have for how we work. It doesn't mean we can't be or do other things or exhibit other things. It's about our comfort zone and where we like to be. And in being a leader, a big part of this is knowing when we need to step beyond these comfort zones in order to manage conflict, empower employees, and build trust. So let's take a look at how this all unfolds in the workplace with some different examples. One thing that comes up a lot is balancing technical expertise with leadership skills. Right? Often you are a subject matter expert in your area, and that's the part that's really exciting for you. And if you've transitioned into something where you are a people leader now, right, it's exciting. We're going to go do this stuff. And right, it requires this stretch. And sometimes it's fatiguing, right, because we're doing things that are outside of that comfort zone. It can be really exhausting when we really prefer, right, the technical facts and data type of stuff. And the people side, maybe our preference is more in educating and, right, communicating, like, what are the steps, right, communicating these facts and data around that. And that can make it difficult to relinquish some of those technical things to other people on your team. Especially if you're in a situation where you've been promoted and you have to step aside from that technical stuff. Sometimes we have a really firm grasp on that and it can be challenging to let go. The other part here is having a strong sense of ownership and attachment to how the work gets done, right? You have put lots of thought, right, into how this is, or you have a certain idea. And that can make it really difficult to delegate tasks, trust other team members, particularly when this is an area where you have a high level of subject matter expertise, right? And we value accuracy. We want to make sure the job is done right. And so sometimes that can cause challenges with micromanagement, right? And different ideas and how it is that we're going to go about and do that. Another big item here, and we're going to talk about this a lot, is effective communication. Right? You're going to be working, right, as we move up, the farther we get up within these organizations, the less we are removed. The less we talk about the technical stuff and the more we're removed from the nitty-gritty day to day. And so sometimes our superpower and why we're in this position is because we need to be able to translate the complex technical concepts into things that are understandable for other people within management, other stakeholders, different customers. And one of the challenges sometimes with that is there's this fear that if you dumb it down or leave something out, that they're going to miss something or they're not going to understand it as well as you do, or that if they only understand part of it, there's going to be some other mistake that happens. So particularly when people are looking for a yes or no answer on something, and they're looking at you like this wasn't an essay question, we can get conflict in those spaces, right? Somebody wants that yes or no answer, and you're trying to build this flow chart of all of the elements that your answer depends on. And it's not that one person is right and the other person is wrong. It's that there can be this conflict that occurs in that space. And it's important to understand these differences and preferences so we can recognize when it's something about the approach in order to move forward. The other part about effective communication is when you have thought about this and it's super close to you, right? You've thought everything through. And so when you put forth that graph, the email, whatever medium it is that you're using to help present that, there's so much depth of information that's in there that those other people may not be picking up on. And so when you're talking about something, there's this tendency when people aren't understanding what's happening, right? You're thinking, it's all right here. What is it that you don't understand? And the challenge is it's really expert bias, right? Because we know it, we forget that others may not. We've thought about it for so long, it all makes sense to us. And so we don't understand where there's gaps or what pieces of information other people don't have. Let's talk about decision making with uncertainty. So this really goes hand in hand with the paralysis analysis side of stuff, right? We want data. When we answer something, we want to know that the confidence interval on our decision is high, right? That what we're saying is true given the things that we know. And the challenge is, right, sometimes we know what we know, we kind of have an idea of what we don't know, and we're okay making a decision with that. But sometimes the amount of unknowns, there's this tipping point, sort of a sweet spot. And we're uncomfortable making that decision based on the amount of data that we have. And so it's right, it starts that whole loop of things. And this is another point, right? Again, the yes, no decision. How do we move forward when we don't have enough data? People have said to, starting a business, like, oh no, come on, Kris, like just embrace messy action. I'm like, no, that like, I don't do messy action. What I can do is curious action, right? When we look at this, right, it's an experiment. We have a hypothesis. We have certain unknowns. It's important to look at these things with context and have the appropriate perspective. Building and maintaining relationships. We value accuracy, and sometimes we can put that above building connection, right? It's not even so much that we want to be right, that it's a personal thing. It's that, right, it's important that this overall product or service or whatever that we're working on, that it is as good as it can possibly be. And we may lean into that being of higher value than the people that are around us. And the other part here too is we're often problem solvers, right? We're really smart. Hey, I can't figure this out. Let's go throw this, right, to you, because I know they're going to be able to figure out the answer to this. And so we're often in this space where we're troubleshooting, we're fixing problems. The challenge is that people don't want to be fixed. They're not problems to be solved. And so it takes a different type of curiosity where we can adapt to people rather than investigating a particular subject in that. So let's talk about adapting to change. I love routine. I have my ideal morning routine. I get my workout and my breakfast, and I'm all set up for work when I sit down to work, right? I've got my list of what I want to get done. I know where to go if I get in trouble. I'm happy to sit down and get to work and do the thing. And I'm okay, right? I'm good with meetings. I'm, clear outcomes and objectives with those meetings, clear action items when I walk away. It's really about clarity, right? Being prepared, having my map, having my compass, even the rain jacket, being prepared for those things. And the challenge is that when change is presented, it creates this cascade, kind of this domino effect of like, oh, this thing changed, right? How does that impact everything, right? Depending on the size of it. And so it can create this cascading effect. And it takes longer to really embrace what's going on because we got to go through the flight checklist to see how this impacts everything else. Right. So some people can be annoyed by that, right? Because they're like, right, go do the thing, where, the preference of an analytical person is more to really chew and digest what it is that you've heard in order to be able to integrate it into your understanding of your world and how that impacts it. Developing a strategic vision. While analytical leaders often excel at solving immediate problems, sometimes we can struggle with the long-term strategic planning and vision. Right. So often we're down and we're experimenting and we're doing the things. And this is not specific to analytical leaders, though. In that troubleshooting space, right, things are busy. We're doing stuff. We're solving problems, right? We're trying to work on what's right in front of us. And in college, I had a professor in heat transfer, and yeah, the class was on heat transfer, but we talked about problem solving and the importance of zooming in and zooming out and making sure that we have the perspective on the problem that we're working to solve, right? As we're going through and working on these things, right? Do the units match? And so sometimes when we aren't connected with the vision, having the context really well defined with the scope of what we're doing, we can get lost in rabbit holes. It impacts prioritization. Well, sure, we could go try that. It's an experiment. So it can create these rabbit holes and tangents. So it's really a two-part. It's one, connecting with the vision, and actually taking the time to develop it as well. Let's talk about empowering and motivating teams for a moment. We talked a little bit earlier about wanting things to be accurate, correct, the best that they can be, some of that maximization of stuff. And so we often find ourselves really focused on the process and the results and not as much on the people. We're really diving into the facts and data aspect of stuff, and we're missing out on the emotion and motivational side of that. And no matter how much you focus on the facts and data part, if you're completely missing people on this emotional and motivational side of things, you're not going to have that positive work environment and get the results that you want with the reduced level of friction that everybody probably desires. So we're going to dive a lot into this one. This is something to talk about a lot with clients. Again, related, I think if we did a Venn diagram of all of these, right, to some extent, all of these overlap to varying degrees. Overcoming perfectionism. We can have really high standards for ourselves, and those can roll down to having really high expectations of people within our organizations, right? It's okay, right, to want people to perform at a level, to expect the best out of people, to think that they're capable of those things. The challenge is that can really get in the way. And this comes back to the whole progress over perfection aspect of stuff. And it's tough because you've probably gotten a lot of praise throughout your career and possibly personally as well about your attention to detail, the high level of quality of products that you deliver. And so it feels like a mixed signal when somebody wants you to get something done, and it doesn't have to be perfect. It's something that's outside of the comfort zone. And so what happens is that when right? When we're expecting that perfection out of somebody else, it impacts that level of trust. It demotivates people on the team when we're going through and we're picking the fly shit out of the pepper, right? That can be exhausting for somebody else. The question we have to really tap into, like, right, is this worth it? So it's making sure that we're not crossing the line into the nitty gritty of things. The other part too with this is that when we have these really high expectations, sometimes it can be really hard to pass it off to somebody else. And so this is something that can impact our ability to delegate, spread things around, and get our work done too. Let's talk about managing time and priorities. So again, natural inclination to deep dive down into data and analysis. Sometimes it can be hard to manage and prioritize because we talked about rabbit holes and tangents and different things like, oh, well, how does this impact that? And so we can, right, we can put our head down and look up and be like, oh my gosh, what just happened to all that time? So whether it's, like the squirrel aspect of stuff, shiny object, stuff that impacts scope creep, we talked about that. Right. And the prioritization too, sometimes is we really want to be able to see the different levels to know like, yes, this is absolutely the most important thing that I need to work on today. Sometimes when it's not clear, it's tough to pick something that priority to move forward. Okay. Dealing with conflict. I don't like conflict. I'll be honest, right? When there's conflict, I'd rather just go walk away and hope that it magically just disappears. So it has taken me a lot to develop, to be able to stretch, to be able to stay present, to be a part of that conversation, right? To manage my own, how I show up, to manage my own emotions within that. And so, connecting with the bigger picture of having that conversation with somebody, like especially providing feedback, or talking about something like, that really needs to be discussed. If it's about, trust or building this relationship with people so that you can work together, it's right. It's uncomfortable to go do that sometimes. And so keeping your eye on like the bigger picture and the value of overcoming and working through that conflict to build trust. So important perspectives in order to make sure that we're not hiding and avoiding. So I know that was a lot. Who here says, I feel so seen? Right? And maybe some of you are going like, oh my gosh, this explains so much about Frank. I totally get it now. So I really hope you enjoyed this today. We've got a lot coming up in Leading Beyond the Spreadsheet. If you found yourself or someone else here in what we've talked about today, be sure to subscribe and share because there's a lot more to come. If you're ready for more, you can download my free guide, your one-on-one upgrade toolkit, the Busy Leader's Guide to Maximizing Value in One-on-One Meetings to transform your one-on-ones from transactional status updates to strategic, empowering conversations. Visit www.actionandeasecoaching.com/toolkit. See you next time.